Bears quarterback wide receiver duo Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze will be the biggest risers in value this offseason. We tell you why, plus reveal more top rising value players on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm learning about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of an early stock watch, right? We're going to do the biggest risers that we think, the players that will rise the most this offseason in value. And then tomorrow we'll come back and say the players we think will lose the most value during the offseason. And both of you and I agreed right off the bat that the biggest risers, and it's already happened, a big chunk, right? Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze from the Bears. The second the Ben Johnson announcement came through that he was going to be their next head coach, I mean, there has to be excitement there for what we should expect from Caleb Williams, jumping from a pretty down and disappointing rookie season to what he could do in year two. And then Rome Odunze, he just was not used enough, right? But under Ben Johnson, with Keenan Allen moving, there is hope that more can be from him too. So let's get into them more. Why do you have optimism that Caleb Williams will rise so much and more, even with the Ben Johnson stuff? Is there other additional things to that?
Yeah, first of all, it's the experience from last year. I also think you're going to have this front office invest in the offensive line. I think they realize, look, he's not going to get sacked 68 times again. I mean, he held on the ball fine a little bit, but also he was pretty good in kind of extending plays and getting things downfield. He's trying to make something happen a little bit for this team. Now, it would be nice if they could run consistently and take some pressure off. So not just for their pass protection, I think they're also going to look on the inside. They can look at, again, Trey Smith from the Chiefs, really could upgrade their offensive line as a whole if they could land him, and then get a Kelvin Banks or a Will Campbell in the first round of the draft, right? Then you're in business. So you have your left tackle, you've got an upgraded guard, and you're going to see a lot like what the Commanders did, upgraded their offensive line in different spots and set it up ahead of getting Jane Daniels. Now they can do it after the fact in Chicago. So I think they'll improve their offensive line. They'll figure out a better solution in the running game. They'll take advantage of weapons that weren't fully taken advantage of, not just Rome Odunze and getting him to stretch the field a lot like James Williams. But I think Odunze could also be like a number one, a complete number one, the way we saw like Jalen McMillan the outside. He was a number two, but I think Odunze can take it to another level. I mean, that's why he was drafted ahead of his former Washington teammate. So there's that. Odunze's upside. You have DJ Moore still hanging around, and Cole Kmet is the other weapon I was talking about at tight end, is that he's athletic. He can make things happen. He was doing pretty well with Justin Fields. I think they sometimes forgot that they had him because they were trying to get the ball to Moore, Allen, and Odunze. So maybe streamlining these weapons, maybe reducing it. Sometimes you have too many weapons, right? With one Daniels, he just was pretty simple, right? It was Terry McLaurin, let's find a number two that works out each week, get the ball to Zach Ertz. Sometimes you keep it simple, get guys who can move the ball, and that's it. I think you're going to be cooking with gas then with Caleb Williams because the talent is there. And look, from QB 24 on average as a rookie, people were taking him as a back-end QB 12, 14. I don't know if he's going to go all the way up there, but he has nowhere to go but significantly up this season from the 24 ranking. It should not be happening for a quarterback with that talent and these weapons.
Yeah, and then bringing in the Ben Johnson piece. I mean, you can't find two offenses really more different than the other this season. I mean, the Bears ranked 28th in points per game, 32nd. It's last in total yards per game, 32nd in yards per play, 31st in passing yards per game, while the Lions ranked first or second in all of those categories. So, and it's not like Ben Johnson was working with this highly like skill set quarterback, right? I like Jared Goff. I think he's a very solid quarterback, but Jared Goff actually led the NFL in both passing yards and passing touchdowns from 2022 to 2024 under Ben Johnson. Like, that's insane to me that Jared Goff is the one leading the league. And it's because of how good Ben Johnson has been as a play caller. I mean, every single year under Ben Johnson, Jared Goff got better. But in his 2021 year, I mean, it was not a fun year for him his first year in Detroit. 3 wins, averaged 6.6 yards per pass attempt, only had 19 passing touchdowns. Instantly, when Ben Johnson becomes the OC in 2022, all of those numbers come flying up. So there is a lot of hope for Caleb Williams here. And like you said, hopefully they fix his offensive line. That will be key. It's key for most quarterbacks, right? Give them a better offensive line and they're going to perform better. And he also needs to learn how to get the ball out of his hands faster. But Ben Johnson should be able to fix that too. With the Rome Odunze side, I think we're really going to underestimate how important Keenan Allen's departure is if they don't re-sign him. Because remember, going into this year, we were like, okay, we really like Rome Odunze as a prospect and as someone that can be good in their career. But we were not in on drafting him as a rookie, because when you have to compete against 2 really, really good veterans, no matter how old Keenan Allen was, you're just not going to get the targets you need to get to succeed as a rookie. Now, if Allen is gone and he can become the number 1 or number 2 option, I do think the sky's the limit. And I think because of how poorly his rookie season did go and how many few weeks he did offer as even fantasy relevant at all, he is still going to go far too late in drafts, and he could be a huge, huge steal next year. His value is going to increase this year, right? And he will probably be an 8th, 9th round pick. But I think even there, he would still be a great value.
Yeah, what we know is that there's a little chemistry not happening with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore. There was something a little bit off. DJ Moore is pouting every time. So I don't know what was going on there. But there was some chemistry between Caleb Williams and Keenan Allen. There was like a whole Los Angeles respect connection when they were both out there. So there was a little bit of that. That's why they went after Keenan Allen. They'd worked out a little bit together. Now, if Allen's out of the equation, the chemistry is going to fall to Rome Odunze, because both these guys came together as first-round picks. They want to succeed together and help each other do that. So I think you'd also see a shift. I mean, you said there's a crowd of veterans, and that was definitely a concern. That's why we didn't like Komet either, because there's just too many guys who catch the ball, including DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. We'll see what they do there, right? They got to upgrade that as well to help him. But when you look at it, here with Williams, again, streamline it a little bit. You don't need to have too many weapons at the young quarterback. Make things a little bit simple. And we've seen that over the years, is just keep it simple sometimes with these younger quarterbacks. And then the other thing I think he'll do is encourage him to use his legs a little bit more. Now, that's not going to be a regular part of the game plan, but that's something Jared Goff couldn't do, right? He couldn't run and add that element. So he's going to say, maybe get him on the move to get some passes downfield, get him to take off and run when things are not there. So that could have had to Williams, but it could also help Odunze, right? Extending plays the natural way, not just sitting in the pocket, holding the ball too long, but maybe rolling them out, being aggressive. We saw a little bit of those concepts with Bo Nix and all that. So some exciting concepts that are going to get this offense going, because they had Luke Getsy and Shane Waldron. That didn't work. Thomas Brown didn't quite work. And then Thomas Brown had to become the head coach, so that changed the guy again. So there's just so much change for Williams, at least with Ben Johnson. And with Odunze now, there will be a little bit more stability, I think, in the way they target and pass the ball.
Yep. We have 2 more rookie wide receivers, I should say, that we expect their value to increase a lot during their sophomore offseason. 1 veteran wide receiver we want to discuss, and then we'll get into some running backs who we think's value will rise later on today's show. We'll get to all of that after a quick break.
All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Prize Picks, and we will have our Prize Picks picks of the week, we can call that, next week for the Super Bowl. So we're going to save those, look at them, because things could change. I'm going to have something related to Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts is running there. So big game is almost here. There's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With more than 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game, where one of the starting quarterbacks only needs to throw for 1 yard to win. So that's good. So you already start there with Hurts or Mahomes. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. So maybe do a little combo with their passing and rushing, and you could be in business already there. It's a lot of fun. Look, it's tough. It's not always just handed to you, but it's a lot of fun. You got to look for the right ones you want to play, and there's so many that you can play, and you can always check out the promos and check all the super sweet Millie winners and their big game lineups. And if you tail lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can split $1 million in promo funds there. So check it out. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to get in. They want you to play with the big game coming if you haven't joined Prize Picks already. And it's a good news there as well. For you download the app today and use the Locked On NFL code to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On NFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Check it out. Play now. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Michelle, time to get into more players we like rising here. So let's talk about another team that hired an offensive-minded head coach. We didn't think it was going to happen at first, but then things weirdly went in this direction. But Liam Coen, and he's already seemed a little bit weird. He gave off some Nick Sirianni immediate Eagles hiring vibes, but we've seen Sirianni work out pretty well. So maybe we have some enthusiasm over Liam Coen and the Jaguars passing game.
Yeah, the number one thing we need to get fixed in this offense is Trevor Lawrence, right? He needs to be more consistent. Yeah. And hopefully Liam Coen can help him do that. And Baker Mayfield had by far his best career season under Liam Coen. Like, he had a really good 2023 season too, don't get me wrong, but he still threw 13 more passing touchdowns this year than he threw in 2023. 41 passing touchdowns. He's never had a season with over 28 before this year. He had 500 more passing yards than he had in any other year. 4,500 passing yards and 41 passing touchdowns. That's a fantastic season for the best of quarterbacks out there, let alone Baker Mayfield. And that's what Liam Coen's offense did. So you're excited there for Trevor Lawrence, and I'm sure his value in fantasy will rise as well. But with Brian Thomas Jr., he did it in a bad offense. He did it with Trevor Lawrence not playing very well. He did it with Mac Jones, who has never played very well, but he didn't just do it. He had the third most receiving yards in the league, behind only Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. That's insane to do as a rookie. Fourth rookie in the Super Bowl era to have 1,200 yards and 10 plus receiving touchdowns with Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham, and Randy Moss. Like, I think obviously going into this offseason, Brian Thomas Jr.'s value is already really, really high. So I don't want to say like we're calling this like he already doesn't have a high value. I think by the time we get to draft season, he's might be a middle of the round first round pick. I think that's how high people are going to start to get on him.
Yeah, right now you look at him, he's wide receiver 11 from last year in average scoring. That's only because he had a slow start. Then he had to deal with Lawrence injury. Then he really got cooking with Mac Jones down the stretch as their clear number one. And what helped along the way is they had Christian Kirk go down. You had Gabe Davis go down. You have an Ingram go down. So he clearly by default had to be the number one target, not just for big plays. He started out as that threat, but then, oh, wait, we need him as a complete receiver. We got no one else to throw to except Parker Washington and a bunch of other dudes that we don't like Brenton Strange. So when we look at this, we had to look at what developed there. Like, it wasn't given to Thomas that he was going to score that high, but the situation developed where the Jaguars were forced to see how dang good he was. Now, he was wide receiver 11, as I said, but you mentioned Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Now, how high do you take this guy? Because there's some maybe concerns about CeeDee Lamb. There's concerns about Tyreek Hill. So is it just those two guys, Puka Nacua, maybe, and then you go to Brian Thomas? Would you even go that high with him, Michelle?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know if I personally will. I just think that's how high his value is going to get by the time we're at draft season, because that wide receiver 3 is so questionable after Jefferson and Chase. I think some people are going to be taking Brian Thomas Jr. next. Maybe, Malik Neighbors might come into this conversation if he gets a real quarterback. And like you mentioned, CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Puka Nacua, these will all be options, but I think Brian Thomas Jr. will be among those options, and he's going to be going so much higher than we can even envision right now. So I just think he's going to be one of the top value risers this offseason, and it's already started, of course. Now, another rookie I think is going to increase like crazy, and you'll actually still be able to get him as a pretty good value. It's Ricky Pearsall. I mean, but he didn't really do much this year, right? Poor guy was shot in the offseason, went right through his chest. It's insane that he played it all in his rookie season. Came back in week 7. It was a slow start. And then week 17 and 18, I think he really showed something once the team finally was letting him on the field and giving him targets and realizing like their season is over. So let's see what the young guys can do. But I truly don't think the 49ers will keep Deebo Samuel around. I know they answered they will. What else are they going to say, right? They're still trying to trade the guy. They will save $5 million in 2025 with a post-June 1st cut or trade, $22 million in 2026 doing that. It's not really about the money, though. I just think Deebo Samuel is a shell of the player he used to be. I don't think it is working with them anymore. The offense was bad whenever they tried to put their offense around him this year. So really, I think Pearsall's going to get a huge opportunity next year. Brandon Ayuk is coming off an ACL tear. And I really think once he got going, I was surprised by how good Ricky Pearsall looked out on the field there at the end of the year.
Yeah, and we were questioning that draft pick, but now it's starting to make sense. They weren't drafting him for 2024, but rather 2025. I mean, Ayuk thing was fluky, right? They didn't want him to go down. That really set their offense down a wrong path, especially with his chemistry with Brock Purdy. But I don't know if Deebo and Brock Purdy have been on the same page. Like, if you look at it, like as Deebo's gotten kind of worn down and older, like George Kittle seems to be like his trusted guy in a lot of situations. And before then, Ayuk was his boy to throw deep, right? So I think he had a much better natural chemistry with Ayuk and Kittle because they can stretch the field, and Brock Purdy is one of the best deep throwers, where Deebo's like the shorter routes and trying to get into the open field, and then Deebo's value, of course, diminished when they got Christian McCaffrey. And what also told me that they might be done with Samuel was he was complaining all that, but also he didn't just step in there and say, McCaffrey's done, we need you to do this again. And they didn't really go to him in that role, right? They tried all the young backs who kept getting hurt as well. So I think that's a sign that they're done with him. And if that's the case, then Pearsall should have a big, big role in this team, right? With Ayuk and Kittle, he should suddenly step into that big three for Purdy. I see all these crazy rumors that they're going to move on from Purdy. That's not going to happen. They're going to lock him up, keep him in. They need to keep his receivers. Pearsall's on a rookie deal here. So I liked him at Florida. I didn't think he was maybe a first-round worthy pick, but everyone is elevated when you put them in the Kyle Shanahan system, and he has enough talent to execute. So I'm looking forward to see what they do with him. But look, he was wide receiver 62. So if he goes up to wide receiver 35 and comes into play, he's still a pretty good value because you're getting someone who can go to wide receiver 3. So there's a lot of room. So sometimes we're cheating because stock wash, there's nowhere to go but up. But Pearsall really could shoot up.
Yeah. And another guy we like to shoot up is DK Metcalf. You know, people are going to be really down on him for a while here. But I think by the time we get to summertime and we start getting training camp highlights and all that stuff, I think we're going to start getting high on him again. But I think it's fair with the new OC, with the change of OC, with Clint Kubiak, who really loves to go deep. Derek Carr threw deep on 13.3% of his pass attempts this year. That was the 5th highest among quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins in 2021 under Clint Kubiak threw deep 11% of the time. He's been under 8% in each of the last 3 seasons. So 11% was above average that year and way above average for Kirk Cousins. Justin Jefferson had 31 deep targets, which is 20 plus air yards under Kubiak in 2021. He's never had more than 22 deep targets in any other season. He had 31 under Kubiak. So I do think DK Metcalf's going to get a lot of deep targets. And that's what we want, right? And Geno Smith can throw deep. He really can if they give him any time. So obviously they need to work on their interior offensive line too. But I think DK Metcalf, by the time we hit summertime, we're going to start seeing those big highlight plays in training camp.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks are also paying very close attention to the Senior Bowl this week, seeing some of these quarterback prospects. Do they want to move on? Do they feel comfortable? Could they somehow flip Geno Smith to the Raiders and Pete Carroll? Could that happen? So I think that's got to be in consideration that they could have a quarterback change. And look, Geno's fine, but I think Geno would say the body work said he liked Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Najigba a little bit more in terms of their comfort level to run routes and all that. But the chemistry was there to some degree with Metcalf and Smith, but not totally there. So we have a quarterback change. it's not necessarily a bad thing for Metcalf. So somebody who's going to push the ball downfield a little bit to him. If it's a younger guy, he's probably going to look at the guy that's 6'4" and big and say, I got to target this guy quite a bit and treat him like kind of a tight end because we don't have one. So I think there are a lot of things that you can look at with Metcalf there. I think if I had to choose, like if the Seahawks are deciding who do I keep here, I'm going to try to keep Metcalf and try to change my quarterback because I think that gives you a little bit more. But you're totally right here with Kubiak and just look, he made the deep ball happen. Shaheed and MVS, these guys were just there, plugged in, and MVS did it without even a threat on the other side because Olave was down for much of it. So Metcalf needs to be reestablished. He's too physically talented with the speed, strength, power. You got to get him involved in a little bit more routes. And I think the one thing, Michelle, I'd also like to see him back getting more slot work here because I think everyone says he should be outside. But that 1 year where they kind of flipped their roles with him and Lockett, Metcalf was really effective. So I think they're just going to move him around a little bit better, not only to get him deep, but also just kind of scheme him open better with Kubiak, and that's what I expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to our top 3 running back risers for this offseason. We'll take a quick break and get into it. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give you your taxes their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. It's only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, we're going to get into our top 3 running backs that we think their stock will rise the most this offseason. I think we need to start with Tyrone Tracy Jr. from the Giants. He was a 4th-round rookie this year. Didn't get much playing time to start the season, but it didn't take him too long to overtake Devin Singletary. It was like the first little Singletary injury, and he took over, and he looked much better than him as well. And somehow Brian Daboll still is alive and is the head coach for the Giants. So he's not getting a coaching change either, which should be good for Tyrone Tracy's future, at least in 2025.
Yeah, to me, sometimes it's the people kind of trying to execute your offense that was a problem because there were some nice flashes from the Brian Daboll offense. And I think that's ultimately why the Giants kept him because, look, there was a lot of youth on the field that he was trying to make use of, right? Malik Neighbors was a guy. I mean, to think about their quarterback situation, Malik Neighbors had that many catches. Like, it just kind of mind-boggling, right? With things that happened with Daniel Jones and Drew Lock and just the direction they had to go with this offense. And then Tyrone Tracy looking good at times. Now, look, everyone is still going to play up. The Giants shouldn't have let Saquon Barkley go. They should have because they're not a good team, and they needed to rebuild. Like the Eagles, yeah, when you're good, you can afford to spend $12 million on your running back and be in the Super Bowl. But when you're bad, you can't pay your quarterback that or running back that much. You can't pay your quarterback as much as they were paying Daniel Jones. So again, I think there's going to be a lot of positive changes here. I think he could benefit, like if they go to like a Cam Ward or a quarterback who can run a little bit, then you can add in those zone read wrinkles. Keep in mind, Brian Daboll is responsible for turning around Josh Allen. So there is some plus side with him there. That's why they're keeping him around too. Turn the page, see what he can do because he kind of inherited Jones, right? And try to make it work. Now let's see what they do. I think the front office will be aggressive to get that franchise quarterback. I don't think you're going to see a Sam Darnold. No, that's a bad direction for the Giants after what they just saw with Jones. So I think you'll see them get a Ward, someone like that. Tyrone Tracy actually is lobbied for a quarterback such as Cam Ward, someone who can move and add another element to that backfield. So we know what that does. If you're a running quarterback, we saw it with the Ravens this year, right? It helps a running back tremendously. Even Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, right? He went to a quarterback who could run, that opens up more because you have to make a decision. And Tracy wants that kind of running or quarterback running back duo. So I'm excited about Tracy. Good talent. I think he's also untapped a little bit in the passing game, given he's a converted wide receiver as well.
Yeah, and I think a key here is that if they're able to fix up their offense even just a little bit, there'll be more opportunities for scoring, right? Only 5 rushing touchdowns. They just were never on the field. They were never near the goal line. It was so hard for them. So I think I'm not worried about Devin Singletary still being there. I actually think it's a good thing he still has one more year on the contract. He's a cheap running back. And it's not going to be serious competition for Tracy. I don't think. Like, Tracy's still going to lead this backfield. He played at least 60% of the offensive snaps in each of the last 6 games of the season. Like, he's going to lead this backfield. I can't imagine they bring in really any true competition for him. So I think his value will increase greatly once free agency's over and once the draft is over. People are going to be like, okay, we can really trust that he's the lead back now. Another guy I think the value will increase by a lot is Ramondre Stevenson. Right now we have a gross taste in our mouth from what a bad half of the year he had. I think by the time we get to summertime, we'll kind of let that disgust go away from us, that bad taste, realize Josh McDaniels is there. Hopefully they can fix up their offensive line. Their offensive line was so incredibly banged up and just not good, right? He didn't start the season all too bad, though. When the team was in games and he got work, like he was putting up 20, 16, 17, 20, 19 fantasy points. And that was all before week 9 I added there. So it was a lot of good games in the first half of the season. And Josh McDaniels should help this offense move a little bit more. The Patriots in 2021 under McDaniels, so last year under him, they had Mac Jones as a rookie. Damian Harris had 15 rushing touchdowns, 929 yards and 200 carries. Ramondre Stevenson was just a 4th-round rookie. He got a decent amount of work there too with 5 rushing touchdowns. Like, I do think overall Stevenson's going to be a nice value, but also people will start to get more up on him by the time we get to summertime.
Josh McDaniels is an interesting case, right? I mean, when he went to go be the offensive coordinator with the Rams, he stunk. When he was the coach of the Raiders, he stunk. When he was the coach of the Broncos, he stinks. But now that you look at this situation, this is his sweet spot, right? This is what he was meant to do, be the Patriots offense coordinator. With Tom Brady, without Tom Brady, with Bill Belichick, without Bill Belichick, this is what Josh McDaniels does best overall professionally. So he's going to realize Stevenson is a talent, and that's a good point you made that he was there when Stevenson was there earlier. So he knows what this kid can do. They paid him. So clearly the front office knows what Stevenson can do. I don't think you're going to mess with his Antonio Gibson kind of dog housing type thing they did with Gerard Mayo and Alex Van Pelt last year. He's a talent that needs to be on the field, right, to help, quote, Pro Bowl quarterback Drake May in year 2. So this is important. Like, they need to get Hunter Henry going. They need to see if they got Jalen Polk as a playmaker. Do they go out and get another playmaker? Yes, I think they will at wide receiver. So this offense is just going to see a makeover. And it's interesting. Tracy was running back 32. Stevenson was RB 29. This is an average half-point PPR scoring last year. I think these guys could really shoot up. I'm not saying they're going all the way to top 12, but I think they should be they should get a real shot to be in the top 20, Michelle. Just with their usage, potential to score quite a bit, just offensive upgrades we expect these teams to make.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I think we need to realize that right now our values are going to be down on certain guys after a poor year. And sooner or later, you do get over it. So that's the Ramondre Stevensons. That's the DK Metcalfs, especially there with these two. And then our last running back, this one's kind of up in the air, but I wanted to go with Jaylen Warren. He's a restricted free agent, but I would imagine the Steelers get him back under contract, right? He won't be expensive. He's restricted. They're not going to have to like fight with anybody. And Najee Harris is a true unrestricted free agent. They didn't give him the 5th-year option. I think he's gone from the Steelers.
For sure, yeah.
So Jaylen Warren is going to be the top guy on this roster. There's really no good free agents out there that they are going to bring in. I think maybe they spend a 2nd or 3rd-round draft pick to compete with Warren, but I still think Warren's going to get a decent shot at being the starting running back for the Steelers next year in an Arthur Smith offense. His value could really skyrocket after the draft and after free agency.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it wasn't like the embarrassment of riches. There were free agent running back last year. They all had a big impact, right? I mean, you go to Saquon, you go to Derrick Henry, you go to Joe Mixon. There's nobody like that. Your top of the heap is Aaron Jones. And then you look around, oh, next it's Najee Harris. Oh, no, we don't want to go there, right? And Aaron Jones is a little bit older, and I don't think you go in that direction. I think it's going to be very telling what the Steelers do in free agency. Say they get an AJ Dillon, right? Someone really cheap that can just be a power back, a backup banger. Then you know that's good for Joe Warren. If they actually try to get an Aaron Jones, you might be worried about it. And I just also don't see this team with a lot of needs investing in this position in the draft because they took a first round pick on Najee Harris. It did not work well. So I don't think they're going to go back to taking a running back high. So I think Warren makes a lot of sense. They like him in this particular offense. Arthur Smith's not going away. He was getting the ball mainly. And we could see the quarterback situation also could improve overall. I mean, even if you get a young guy in there, it could improve over Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And if it's Fields, great. We just talked about if you get a running quarterback in there, it helps the running back as well. So Warren has got a good skill set. I think some people saw him, he's just a change of pace, limited guy. He can't be on the field too long with Najee Harris, but I think he can show the Steelers a little bit more than that, expand his role. He was RB 46 last year. Again, he should at least get into higher flex consideration, if not some back end RB2 thoughts, depending on what the Steelers do this offseason with the rest of their backfield.
Yeah, he's a little bit smaller than James Conner, but I mean, this is kind of the same way that James Conner got his role, right? Le'Veon Bell was finally gone, and James Conner stepped up, and he never looked back. And until they stupidly decided to replace him with Najee Harris, he had a really good fantasy, performances. So will be interesting to see how his value increases this year if the Steelers do decide to officially move on from Najee Harris. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us that subscription. If you're listening to us on a podcast app, give us a like, review, all that good stuff. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.